Is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, everybody. You are probably familiar with Bill Bachrach and his reputation in our industry. Just as a quick refresher, here are a couple of highlights. Bill is a Hall of Fame keynote speaker, a 9-time presenter at the $1 Million Roundtable and Top of the Table annual meetings, an effective workshop leader, and by far the highest paid coach for financial advisors in the world. His latest resource is the Advisor Roadmap. It's a virtual training platform that makes everything a financial professional needs to learn about client acquisition, client service, leadership, and time management, available 24/7 on your computer, laptop, tablet, and mobile phone for an extremely affordable price. He is also an industry best-selling author and philanthropist. Bill is on the adjunct faculty for Singularity University and a regular presenter at their Exponential Finance Conference. In his free time, Bill likes to go on interesting places and trips with his wife, Anne, to do challenging bike rides in Europe and heli ski in British Columbia. Welcome, Bill.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that nice introduction, and welcome everyone to our webinar today. What you see on the screen is you see a picture of my wife, Anne, and me. And if we look a little funky, it's because we're playing a little dress up there. We're at a wedding, and there was a fun photo op. And Anne and I are both 58 years old. And one of the things we like to do is get some benefit from your collective wisdom. So you are a smart, successful financial professional, and we'd like to get some feedback from you because we have some really important decisions to make about our future. So we're going to ask you to help us out by responding to this particular poll. So the question that we need your input about is, how long should we plan to live? All right, so we've launched the poll, and you can go to your GoToWebinar control panel and you can answer the question. So I'm just going to give you a minute to respond, and then I'll use your information not only to help us make better choices, but also to frame some of the work that we're going to do today. All right, got a few more people who are still yet to vote. I've got a little dashboard that tells me that currently 70% of you have responded to the poll. So looking for 100% participation. Question is, how long should Anne and I plan to live? You know we're going to put you to work today, right? And actually have to think a little bit. We appreciate that. 80% have voted, looking for 100% participation. Question is, how long should Anne and I plan to live? Okay, excellent. That puts us close to 100% participation. So just in the interest of time, I'll close the poll now, and I will tell you that the results are, so the options were 75, 80, 85, 90, and well over 100. All right, so 1% of you said 75, 1% of you said 80, 8% of you said 85, 40% of you said 90, and 56% of you said that Anne and I should plan to live to be well over 100. All right, so it's an interesting question, right? And it's really the most important question that your clients answer, because what if you get that wrong? I mean, how much of your financial advice is wrong if the target age for how long your clients are going to live is wrong. I mean, and what if you're way wrong? All right, so what if you think we should plan to live to be 80 and we live to be 90 or 95 or 100? What if you're decades wrong? What if you're planning for your clients live to be age 95 and they live to be 110 or 115 or even older? So based on the impact of some of the disruptions we'll discuss today, Ann and I changed our goals to extend that target date substantially. So after some consideration and some strategy with our financial advisors, we picked 2 different ages. All right, so couples may not pick the same age. So even though we're about the same age now, Ann picked age 132 and I picked age 135 for planning purposes. So you can imagine there was kind of an interesting moment when Ann realized that I was going to live 3 years longer than she was. So she paused and she said to me, "So you're going to live 3 more years after I die?" And I said, "Well, yep, it looks that way. I mean, you picked your date, dear." And then she said, "So do you think you'll remarry?" And of course, it was a big mistake on my part answering this question too quickly. A person who's been married as long as I have should have known better. I said very rapidly, I said, "Yeah, I think I will remarry." And Ann said to me, "Really?" And I said, "Well, sure, why not? I mean, when I finally die at age 135, I hope my second wife is so upset that she's got to drop out of college." Now, fortunately, my wife has a really good sense of humor, and she thought that was funny. But this is really a more serious subject than that. I mean, really, could a 58-year-old couple live to be over 130? And the answer to that question is maybe they can. And perhaps you're having a hard time believing that, but remember, beliefs are funny things, right? Have you noticed that not everything we believe to be true is actually true? Have you ever believed that something was true that turned out to be false? By the same token, not everything you believe to be false is actually false, right? So really today's webinar will definitely expand your thinking, which will help you rather make better decisions for your clients and for yourself and your business. You see, the best financial advisors aren't just people who study money. They're people who help their clients prepare for the future. All right, so there's a future out there, and if you're too busy studying money and not spending enough time studying the future, you're very likely to get it wrong. In fact, until recently, your financial planning software wouldn't even allow you to plan past age 99. And fortunately, the planning software companies are coming around because over age 100 is the fastest growing demographic in the United States. All right, so think about preparing for the future and planning for the future and studying the future being just as important as preparing for financial issues and helping people make smart choices about their money. So the driver of the future is something experts call the singularity. So what exactly is the singularity? Well, according to Wikipedia, the technological singularity is the hypothesis that accelerating progress in technologies will cause a runaway effect wherein artificial intelligence will exceed human intellectual capacity and control, thus radically changing civilization in an event called the singularity. So essentially, the singularity is that place in the future where machines are smarter than people. Now, I know what you're thinking. Some machines are already smarter than some people. Some machines are already smarter than all people in some ways. What we're really talking about is the place in the future where the norm is that machines are smarter than people. Because the capabilities of such intelligence may be impossible for a human to comprehend, the technological singularity is an occurrence beyond which events may become unpredictable, unfavorable, or even unfathomable. In other words, it's hard for us as humans to really relate to this idea that we could be coexisting in a world where machines are not only as smart as us, but are smarter than us. So you might be thinking, well, when is this going to happen? Well, some experts say as soon as 2029, and some say more like 2045. But here's really the key. It's not a line in the sand, all right? It's not a moment where in one moment everything is old-fashioned, and in another moment, everything is like supercharged. It doesn't happen exactly like that. It's a progression that's been happening for a long, long time. Now, it's already impacting us in significant ways right now, and the rate of progress is accelerating. So one high-profile example of machines getting smarter than people was when the chess champion played the computer. Now, in 1994, the chess masters believed that the best machines might someday make it on the list of top 100 chess players in the world, right? They didn't really see a machine beating the best chess players, but they thought they might be able to compete. Well, 3 years later, in 1997, world champion Garry Kasparov was defeated by IBM's chess-playing supercomputer, Deep Blue. You probably remember much more recently when things got interesting. In 2011, IBM's Jeopardy-playing computer, Watson, which was not connected to the internet, defeated Ken Jennings, who held the record of winning 74 matches in a row. And you can see it wasn't even close. Look at the score on the screen. Ken, the reigning world human Jeopardy champion, raised $300,000 in the same amount of time that Watson won $100,000, and poor Brad was even further back at $200,000. So winning Jeopardy required Watson to understand clues in natural spoken language. It had to learn from its own mistakes. It had to buzz in and answer in natural language faster than the best Jeopardy playing human. According to IBM, Watson achieves this because more than 100 different techniques are used to analyze natural language, identify sources, find and generate hypotheses, find and score evidence, and merge and rank hypotheses. And it did all that rapidly, and I'll say it again, it was not connected to the internet. This is stand-alone artificial intelligence. Now, fast forward just a couple of years, and there's an even more complicated game called Go. And in the final game of their historic match, Google's artificially intelligent Go-playing computer system defeated the Korean Grandmaster. His name is Lee Sedol, finishing the best-of-5 series with 4 wins and 1 loss. So this win puts an exclamation point on a significant moment for artificial intelligence. Over the last 25 years, machines have beaten the best humans at checkers, chess, Othello, and Jeopardy, but this is the first time the machine topped the very best at Go. Now, Go is the game you may not be familiar with. It's a 2,500-year-old game that's exponentially more complex than chess and requires, at least among humans, an added degree of intuition. Lee Sedol was considered to be essentially the Roger Federer of the Go world. So what we're talking about here is we're talking about the singularity being driven by the law of accelerating returns. And that means that technology is growing at a compound rate. So just like money grows at a compound rate, which is a good thing for you and for your clients to achieve their goals, technology is growing at an even faster compound rate. You're familiar with Moore's Law, right? Moore's Law is the law that dictates that the microchip has been doubling in speed and processing power every year or so since the mid-1960s, while simultaneously halving in speed and cost. All right. Well, now we're beyond Moore's Law, where it's just a doubling, and we're actually moving into a more accelerated rate, where technology is moving at even a faster rate than Moore's Law. And so you can imagine the word accelerating simply means exponential versus linear growth. So linear is 1 + 1 = 2, and 2 + 1 = 3, and so on. Exponential is where 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8, and so on, and so on, and so on. So you probably remember as a rookie financial advisor that there was this little exercise where you were asked the question, would you rather have a doubling penny or $1 million? And if you're like me, when you were a rookie financial advisor, this was a little game that was played so you could learn about compound interest. And I don't know about you, but I found it difficult to grasp the idea that a single penny doubling for 30 days could end up being more than $1 million, all right? So I sort of figured, well, it's going to grow more than I thought it was going to grow, and that's going to be the point. But when I was asked the question, I said, hey man, I'll take the $1 million, right? So to me, saying, well, would you rather have $1 million or a doubling penny every 30 days? Even though I figured there was probably some kind of sort of trick here, I still thought, well, the $1 million is the better choice. All right, so here's what that looked like. So in the first 27 days, that penny grew to $671,088.64, right? Which is remarkable, because if you look at the end of the first column at day 9, it was only $2.56, right? 9 days later, it was only $1,310.72. 9 days, in just 9 days, it then went from $1,300 to almost $700,000. So you know where this is going, right? Day 28, bang, there it is. I chose the $1 million. On day 28, I lost $342,000. On day 29, it doubled again to $2.6 million, which means I was now down, because I picked the million, almost $1.7 million. And on day 30, it was $5.3 million, which means my decision to take the $1 million in the doubling penny cost me $4,368,709.12. But who's counting, right? So the interesting thing to consider, and I did this little exercise in order to make this point today, is what happened to the penny in the second 30 days, right? Nobody ever talks about that. It's like, oh, we made the point about compound interest. Well, what would happen if we kept going? Well, here's what would happen 60 days later, right? So on day 31, it doubled again, and now it's $10.7 million. On day 60, that's your number, all right? Now, I didn't create a little poll to launch, but take a minute and just count all these numbers up and imagine for a moment, what number is that actually? And I've used this to illustrate this point in live audiences and other workshops, and very rarely do even financial professionals guess what that number 5 is. I didn't guess, I had to look it up online, right? So it's 523 million, that's billion, 607 billion, that's trillion, 764 trillion. So what's that number, right? That's actually a quadrillion. 1 quadrillion is 1,000 trillion, 10,000 billion, and 100,000 million. So the point is, if you thought the past technology progress was impressive, you ain't seen nothing yet. So you say, wow, over the last 10 or 20 or 30, 40 years, there's been a lot of technology progress. So there's going to be a lot of technology progress over the next decade and 2 decades and 3 decades. Well, it's not going to be like the last decades. It's going to be exponentially more significant. And that raises a lot of questions, not only for our clients, but also for us as financial advisors. So it's a pretty common question among financial advisors to wonder, will machines replace human financial advisors? So, you know, they call them robo-advisors. We know all about autonomous cars, but what about autonomous advisors? And some predictions are that 58% of financial advisors could be replaced by machines in the next 10 years. And then the question, of course, to consider as a thinking financial advisor is who's going to be replaced? So it makes sense that some financial advisors would be replaced by machines. In fact, they already have been, but who would be replaced? And I would just pose, and you may be already thinking this, well, really just the bad ones. All right, so if 58% of the financial advisors were replaced, if we just use sort of regular scoring, if you get an A if you're in the top 10%, and a B if you're in the next 20%, and a C if you're in the next 30% or 70th, the 70 percenters, and you're a D if you're in the 60 percenters, then really the bottom 58% of financial advisors, those are just the financial advisors who suck anyway. So when I use this to illustrate, I have a lot of financial advisors who say, hey, good riddance, the industry would be a lot better off if the bottom 50% got blown out. The challenge is that there isn't a scoring system like that. And there are a lot of financial advisors who might be in the bottom 58% who wouldn't self-score themselves in the bottom 58%. So it's really pretty simple. Maybe some financial advisors are going to lose their job to machines, but probably only the bad ones. It reminds me of when the drum machine was introduced. All right, so the drum machine was a machine that could literally be programmed to play the drum beats with the right time in the right sequence. So why would a band bother to pay a drummer rather, when it could buy a machine to simulate or emulate or replicate what the drummer does? All right, so it's really only the bad drummers that were put out by the drum machine, because the great drummers were not. For example, here's one of the great drummers of all time. See if you recognize him. You got the funk of vibe. You got the funk of vibe. So that is a famous drummer named Dave Garibaldi, and the band that he's famous for playing with is Tower of Power. And there's no way that Tower of Power would have traded Dave Garibaldi for a drum machine. What about this guy? Monday warrior, mean strike. Today's time so you mean strike. Yep, well, there's a little clue in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. That's Neil Peart. Neil Peart plays with a little band you might be familiar with called Rush. Right, so could you imagine Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson, the other two members of the band Rush, calling a meeting and saying, hey, listen, if we replace Neil with a drum machine, we can split the profits 2 ways instead of 3 ways. Right, there was no chance that Rush is going to get rid of Neil Peart and replace him with a drum machine. And that, of course, is the classic rock band Led Zeppelin. And John Bonham, their drummer, died way prematurely and way too young. And when John Bonham, the drummer, died, so did Led Zeppelin. Robert Plant was the voice of Led Zeppelin, but Bonzo was the soul of Led Zeppelin. Machines have no soul. So technology is table stakes. What you have to bring to the client relationship is soul, empathy, accountability, and leadership. So what you'll probably continue to see is insurance and investment management, they will continue to be commoditized. There's no real soul in the products themselves, but real planning and advice will be much more difficult to commoditize. The other thing to consider is that you don't know who the players are who are going to enter the financial services business. So all 3 of these companies, Google, Amazon, and Apple, are playing some role and are experimenting with being in the financial services industry. You probably heard recently that Toys R Us went out of business. They filed for bankruptcy, and they blame Amazon. And when Amazon came along, they were just an online bookseller, right? So how has Amazon grown to dominate the retail space, not just in the United States, but in many countries around the world, right? So we don't want to compete with Google or Amazon or Apple. They may be very effective at bringing in artificial intelligence, right? So we have to be aware that these things are occurring and make really good decisions as humans to be successful. Now, by far, the most interesting implications of the singularity are on health and longevity. So things like genetics, robotics, nanotechnology, and synthetic biology will transform the length and quality of our lives, right? So what are the practical implications? Well, every year you live longer, you increase the odds that you will live significantly longer. That additional year may be the year that some genius human, supported by powerful artificial intelligence, finds a cure for what was going to kill you. In other words, if you live to be 70, the odds that you're going to die at 74, which was your life expectancy when you were born, are very small. When you live to be 70, your life expectancy is now into the 80s. If you live to be 80, your life expectancy is now into the 90s. If you live to be 90, your life expectancy is now past 100. So every year that you live, your life expectancy extends even further. All right, so it's a good probability that every year you live, whatever was going to kill you is not going to kill you, because they will have found some cure for that. And it may be a pharmaceutical cure, or it may be a technology cure. So that means men are going to live longer, even though they'll probably still die before their wives. Women will inherit the money and live a very long time, which is why it's so crucial to consider that 70% of widows fire their advisor within the first year of becoming a widow. This also has huge implications on generational wealth transfer. All right, so the money is not going to get to the kids as soon as most people who talk about generational wealth transfer say that it's going to get to the kids. And then, of course, what about the kids influencing their mom's decision as she's living longer and longer and longer? All right, so to be very blunt about it, how bad does a financial advisor have to suck so that the kids could usurp your leadership over your client and their mother? All right, so the implications are significant and really interesting. So you and your clients are going to live much longer, healthier lives. So this is a picture of Dave Scott. And when the Hawaii Ironman in 1978 began, you had to be a young genetic mutant with a singular focus on health and fitness to even consider attempting the event. Dave Scott won the Hawaii Ironman 6 times between 78 and 1985, right? And he was sort of that physical specimen who would do something like the Hawaii Ironman. All right, so today men and women in their 70s and their 80s routinely finish Ironman races within the 17-hour time limit. So advances in genetics, robotics, nanotechnology, and synthetic biology are making a much longer, healthier life a significant reality, which means that real financial planning is more important and valuable than ever, because your clients are not going to die when they thought they were. All right, so your clients are making the same mistake that most financial advisors are making. They think linearly, which means they think, well, if I'm lucky, I'll live a few years longer than my mom and dad, when the reality is that they're probably going to live decades longer than their mother and father. So here's the key question. How will you and your clients spend your money if you live decades longer at a quality of life that makes you glad to be alive? All right, so I often hear from financial advisors, well, Bill, it's not how long you live, it's your quality of life. I mean, we all feel that way. Nobody wants to live a long time and have a crappy quality of life. What the singularity makes possible is not only long life, but a long, high quality of life. So, question, how will you and your clients spend your money if you live decades longer at a quality of life that makes you glad to be alive? Right? And the answer to that question is, you're going to spend your money on life. You and your clients are going to spend your money on living a great life, which is going to be more active for a longer period of time. We'll spend our money on replacement parts, life extenders that may not be covered by insurance, artificial organs and limbs, clone parts from your own DNA. We'll spend whatever it takes to live a long and high quality of life. And what we're talking about goes beyond just artificial hips, knees, and pacemakers. I mean, that's just the beginning. Look at that little illustration in the turquoise box of pacemaker technology. Right, so the pacemaker was invented in 1958, and it's implanted, if you know anybody who has a pacemaker, it's literally implanted into a person's chest. It's got a battery and wires. Those wires that you see are called leads, and they actually plug into a person's heart. And when a person's heart doesn't beat when it's supposed to, the pacemaker knows that, and it sends a little electrical current, and it makes the person's heart beat, right? And that device has been around for almost 50 years, since 1958. And you can see the progression. It went from 74 grams to 2 grams, and look at the difference in the size. And think about, if you needed a pacemaker, I've never known anybody who needed a pacemaker who said, no, I'd rather die. Right? I don't know anybody who has a problem walking from their hips or their knees or other joints who doesn't say, hey, I'll take the artificial device. So these are just the beginning of what's to come. So another good example is Steve Jobs. So unfortunately, Steve Jobs died way too young. He died at the age of 55 of pancreatic cancer. He was worth $11 billion when he died. All right, just think about that for a moment. He was worth $11 billion when he died. Now, what if at the time there had been an artificial pancreas? If such a thing as an artificial pancreas had existed at the time, do you think that Steve Jobs would have wanted one? All right, now what if it was just an experimental artificial pancreas? All right, so question, how much of Steve's $11 billion do you think he would have paid to have an artificial pancreas installed and replacing his cancer-ridden pancreas? And I think you're right about that. I think the answer is all of it, right? But you might consider that he might have actually spent more than all of it, right? So what if an artificial pancreas, even an experimental artificial pancreas, and that, by the way, is a picture of the real existing artificial pancreas, right? What if it had been $30 billion? Steve says, man, I've only got 11 billion. I need 30 billion so that I can live. Right? So where would he have found the other $20 billion? Well, a little hypothetical in my mind is I'm guessing that 10 of his wealthy friends, so Apple would have kicked in $1 billion, 9 of his billionaire friends would probably said, yes, he would do it for me. I'll kick in $1 billion. Now we're up to 20 billion, and we're still 10 billion short. All right, so where would we get the other $10 billion so Steve could get his artificial pancreas and live a longer and healthier and productive life? All right, well, I know, hey, I'm an Apple person. I love Mac. I've got an iPhone. I've got an iPad. I've been a big Apple fan since Apple first came out. You know, so crowdfunding, right? Kickstarter campaign. The Kickstarter campaign would be donate money so Steve can live. And my guess is Apple fans around the world, you know, 50 bucks at a time, 10 bucks at a time. I'd probably kick in $1,000, would build up the other $10 billion. All right, so the point is that most of us will do whatever it takes to extend our lives, particularly if we can have a longer, healthier, high-quality life. All right, so that's what we are going to do because that's just human nature. Your clients are going to live much longer, which makes financial planning and making smart choices about their money even more important due to a much longer and much more active future. And however old you are, you're going to live much longer, and that means you're going to work much longer than you might have previously thought, which means you're going to need to be even more financially successful over a longer period of time. So it was mentioned during my introduction that I'm an adjunct faculty for the Singularity University, and I regularly speak at the Exponential Finance Conference, which is held the beginning of June every year in New York City. And this year I was asked to facilitate a panel, and I got a couple of other experts on the panel, and we were all asked to answer the same 5 questions. So here are the 5 questions, and here are the answers to those 5 questions, which are key to you making better decisions for your career as well as for helping your clients. And the first question, of course, is, do financial advisors have a future in the exponential world? And the answer to that question is a resounding yes. Human financial advisors have a future in an exponential world. I don't believe all human financial advisors have a future in an exponential world because many are sort of They have their heads buried in the sand. They're not listening to a webinar like this today. They're studying money, but they're not studying the future, and they're likely to be displaced by artificial intelligence or human intelligence that was smart enough to keep up. So the second question that I was asked is, how do you see humans competing with machines and artificial intelligence in the financial services industry? And the key is by doubling down on being human. So the mistake that some human advisors make is they try to keep up with the machines. All right, so shockingly enough, you still have humans who, instead of using the very advanced artificial intelligence-based modern technology of financial planning software, they're still using Excel and sort of building their own spreadsheets. So they're trying to compete with technology rather than harnessing technology and doubling down on being human. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. There are some significant advantages to being human. So how do you see humans collaborating with machines and artificial intelligence in the financial services industry? And essentially, it's humans manage the relationships and machines do all the hard skill work. All right, that's, for example, why you're seeing portfolio management being commoditized. Portfolio management is a perfect job for a machine. It's an algorithm. You program an unemotional machine to buy and sell securities in a portfolio in a particular way based on a formula, and they never get emotionally distracted by politics or by war or by governments or by economics. They just execute just the way they're supposed to execute. They've been programmed to, which is why you've seen the fees for portfolio management have dropped to 10 to 25 basis points is pretty much the fair market value for asset management. We've actually seen it be given by some companies. Machine-based investment management is being given away for free. And we could actually see in the next few years where, just like banks pay for deposits, investment companies could pay for assets to be deposited. So where you think you can make a living with assets under management, we may be moving into a world where not only does investment management pay zero, but the big investment management firms actually have to pay to get the assets on the books. And they'll do that because there are other ways they can make money with the money besides just investment management. All right, so humans manage the relationships, and technology manages the details and does all the number crunching work. All right, so another question I was asked is, what would I be afraid of? And I can tell you what concerns me as someone who trains financial advisors for a living and is very immersed in this business. What would concern me is if artificial intelligence gets to the point where you could literally download a free app, and through the use of virtual reality, you download the app, you put on your virtual reality goggles, and now you have an avatar that is just like Warren Buffett, looks like Warren Buffett, acts like Warren Buffett, talks like Warren Buffett, and it's so real in your virtual reality world that humans can't tell the difference or wouldn't care, because the Warren Buffett avatar financial advisor is so much better than a human financial advisor. I think we would all have to agree that if Warren Buffett decided to be a retail financial planner, he would have no problem acquiring clients. So I don't know about you, but of all the people on the planet who I'd really not want to compete with to retain my clients, it would probably be Warren Buffett. Right, so we know that Warren Buffett isn't going to become a retail financial advisor, but what if some enterprising person with the benefit of artificial intelligence can create an app that simulates a Warren Buffett experience, asks all the right questions, instantly crunches the numbers, and literally it's a free or a very inexpensive app on your phone. So that's something that, I don't know if I exactly say I'm afraid of it, but that would be a real game changer if something like that were to occur. The fourth question that they asked me was, well, what would give you confidence? And I can tell you what gives me confidence today is that most financial advisors are product-pushing asset gatherers or insurance agents or annuity salespeople who are mostly oblivious to what being a great financial advisor really means. And many of them are just too old to change. All right, so I call them ACEs. And ACE is an acronym that stands for arrogant, complacent, and entitled. Right, so many financial advisors arrogantly believe that their clients will never leave them, which makes them complacent about building their skills and being students of the future they're supposed to be preparing their clients for. And many of them believe, because they've worked for decades, they're somehow entitled to make a lot of money without much effort. So you have a lot of advisors out there who have, tens or hundreds of millions of dollars of assets under management. They're charging 1% on top of the portfolio management fee, and they think they're entitled to that. Hey, it took me 20 years to build this AUM, and I've got 100 million. I make $1 million a year. Well, when that goes to 50 basis points, their revenue just got cut in half. And for most of them, they can't afford for their revenue to be cut in half to be successful. And many of them would be unwilling to do the work to go get $200 million to make $1 million at 50 basis points. And then what happens when it gets cut in half again? What happens if it goes to zero? Right? So the reason this gives me confidence, and it should give you confidence, is because stealing their clients is pretty much like taking candy from a baby. I mean, that's what thousands of advisors we work with are doing, and you can do exactly the same. Now, the last question that I was asked is, if I decided to become a financial advisor again today, what would I do? How would I go about it? And the answer is, I would deliver truly comprehensive financial services for a smaller clientele who pay more per client for a better client experience. And I would almost certainly charge some kind of a fixed fee for that, a planning fee, a fixed dollar amount for ongoing planning and advice and accountability. We'll talk a little bit more about that. I would separate how people pay me from the products and services, right? So as the products and services continue to be commoditized, clients recognize they're paying me for the value of me. So I recommend that you do the same. You deliver truly comprehensive financial services, and clients are paying you for the value of you. Right? So we're going to be transitioning in a few minutes to answer questions. And those of you who've been on a webinar with me before know that I will stay on and answer every single question that's asked. So it's common that the Q&A will go past the top of the hour. So just in case you're wondering, we do record these webinars, so this webinar is being recorded. You will be emailed a link to the replay so that you can watch it again and listen to it again. You probably know you can watch a movie a second or third time and see things you didn't see the first time through. If you have a question, you just go to the questions area on the GoToWebinar control panel and you submit your question. All right, so because we have many hundreds of people registered for this webinar, we can't just open it up. We can't just open up the question, open up the lines. There's just too much background noise and distraction. So you open up the GoToWebinar control panel questions area, you type your question in, you submit it, and I will answer your questions in the order that they are submitted. So we already have quite a few questions in the queue. I just wanted to give everybody a heads up about that. And if we go past the top of the hour, then that will all be recorded as well, and that will all be on the replay. All right? So moving right along, the bottom line is that you want to have the skill and confidence to talk to anyone, anytime, anywhere. All right? So you have to be able to engage people on the phone, online, and face-to-face, anywhere and everywhere that you meet people. And you have to do so in a way that inspires them to trust you and agree to do all of their business with you. Right? You know this is a trust business, right? And everyone has embedded in their subconscious mind an imaginary trust dial. And everything you say and do moves the needle on that trust dial one direction or the other. The ability to build trust is your most important people skill. And this will be the most difficult thing for the machines to replicate. So even when the machines are very good at behaving in a trustworthy manner, many people will still prefer to work with a human because they won't be able to sort of get past the idea that, yeah, I know this is a Warren Buffett avatar and it's really slick and cool, but I know it's still not real. And many people will prefer something that's real, and it'll have to do with this idea of building high trust client relationships. And you have to do this all without ever coming across like a slimy financial advisor trolling for business. So more people say, hey, we want to get started, rather than say that dreaded, oh, we want to think it over. Right? So advisors with great people skills much more often hear let's get started than let's think it over. Right? And as we talked about, technology, machines, and artificial intelligence are commoditizing the products. During your entire financial services career, no matter how long or short that's been, the only direction you've seen fees and commissions go is down. When I started in the business, mutual funds paid an 8.5% upfront load. The commissions on insurance and annuities were much higher than they are today, and they just have progressively gone down and down and down and down and down. People say, how low can they go? Well, with fintech and insurtech and some of the major players out there having a variety of ways they can make money, don't be surprised if the fees and commissions attached and associated to the products go to zero or even beyond zero, which is why so many executives and so many leaders in the financial services are saying things like the quote on your screen right now. In the old world, we gave away the planning and advice and sold the products. In the new world, we're going to get paid for planning and advice and give away the products. Right? So just let that sink in for a moment. Right? So how many times have you said, hey, I'll do planning for you at no charge, right? Because I get paid on the back end. When you bring the assets over, I get 1%. When you buy insurance or annuities, I get a commission. So think about all the planning that's given away for free, and then think about this idea, read it along with me. In the old world, we gave away the planning and advice and sold the products. In the new world, we're going to get paid for planning and advice and give away the products. All right, so are you still stuck in the old world? Because the new world is already here. The fastest growing segment of the financial services industry is getting paid for planning and advice and accountability. Let me break those down individually. Planning is creating a game plan. So no plan survives the battlefield. So planning isn't producing a 3-ring or leather-bound binder. Planning is not running a computer program and printing it out. Planning is an ongoing process. So you should be paid upfront and ongoing for planning. Advice is the what to do. There's a plethora of information. It's overwhelming, it's confusing. All the information in the world is available for free. People do not need education and information. What they need is advice, right? So advice is the output from the planning. And then, of course, there's that most important word, accountability. So accountability means holding your clients accountable to do what they need to do to achieve their goals, especially when it's uncomfortable, right? So think about that. Will the machines be able to hold people accountable to implement? All right, so all you have to do for that answer is to think about your phone and how you use it as your alarm now. And so when that alarm goes off in the morning, it's a machine that's giving you the advice to get up. You decided the night before, I want to get up at this particular time, and you programmed the machine to wake you up at that time. And then what can you instantly do when that alarm goes off? All right, well, if you're like me, you hit the snooze button. All right, so, and what will the machine do? Well, it will snooze. And 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 minutes later, it'll go off again. And you can just hit the off button. So the machine will not actually hold you accountable to get up, even if it wakes you up. So how much is it worth to the client when you hold them accountable to stay in the market when their emotions are to get out? How valuable is it to the client to hold them accountable to buy the insurance that they really need, to hold them accountable to get their estate planning done, to hold them accountable to file their taxes and pay them in full on time? How valuable is it to hold people accountable to do what they need to do to achieve their goals, especially when it's uncomfortable? All right, so there's a reason why gym memberships are cheap, but personal trainers are expensive. All right, so How many of us have a piece of fitness equipment that doesn't get used, even though it works perfectly, but it requires somebody to hold us accountable to implement, right? So, and then of course, you have to use your technology, all right? So there are these great tools like Money Guide Pro and eMoney and many other planning technologies that get vastly underused, all right? So planning, advice, and accountability, getting paid for that, and using your tools to deliver on the promise. Right, so as I mentioned, we'll be shifting to Q&A here in just a few minutes. So if you have a question, just go to the GoToWebinar control panel and submit your question about anything that we've talked about here today, or anything you think that I might be able to help you with that'll help you be a better advisor and run a more successful financial services business. All right, so before we get to Q&A, I'm sure you're smart enough to recognize that you'll not develop the skill and competence you need to thrive in the new financial services world, disrupted by the impact of the singularity and higher regulations, by listening to me talk on this webinar today. So webinars are great for disseminating information, but they're not really good for building skill. And that's why we created the Advisor Roadmap virtual training platform, and why becoming a member will help you be a better and more successful financial advisor no matter what the future brings. So what it is it's a platform that's dedicated to helping you have brilliant people and communication skills, not only so they won't be disrupted or so you won't be disrupted out of the business by artificial intelligence, but so you can compete successfully with the great human financial advisors, all right? So as the bad financial advisors are forced out of the business by the machines, that means that the human competition gets better, while the machine competition also gets better and stronger. So this is definitely an era where your people and communication skills have to be really strong. So if you agree with what we're talking about here and you'd like to elevate your people and communication skills, you can join our online virtual community for an extraordinary small investment. So I'm just going to give you a quick preview of what's involved in that and what the fees are, and then we'll pivot to answering your questions. So defined, the Advisor Roadmap is a self-guided online virtual training platform packed with videos, scripts, demonstrations, interactive training courses, and other high-value resources to help you master the repeatable processes that are crucial to acquiring and serving ideal clients. The beauty is that this is what I've basically done. I've essentially put part of my business out of business by using artificial intelligence to deliver everything we know about client service, leadership, client acquisition, and time management 24/7 to your computer, tablet, and smartphone. All right, so using state-of-the-art gamification techniques and adult learning theory, you have a higher probability of engaging, retaining, implementing, therefore having success and getting results. And we're able to do this for a fraction of the value of one good client. All right, so literally for a few $100s, you can get access to everything we know about client acquisition, client service, leadership, and time management, where in the past, you would have paid many thousands of dollars for live training that frankly wasn't any better than what we're able to do through this platform. All right, so I've mentioned the platform is organized, client acquisition, client service, leadership, and time management. And we're probably more heavily weighted in client acquisition. So our members tell us that their #1 priority is client acquisition. So while there's great content in all areas, there is the most content. The site is most robustly built under client acquisition. All right, so the entire course, most of you are familiar that we have a methodology called values-based financial planning and some tools for moving existing clients and prospects to trust you more quickly and do all their business with you. So the entire values-based financial planning curriculum is inside the virtual training platform. We have a 7-course curriculum called the 7 Critical Conversations to build and maintain a 7-figure planning and advice business. Every day, you actually receive a little motivational quote. Now, I don't know about you, but some days are better than others, and I like to start my day with a little motivational thought that will help me have a more positive day and be more productive and sort of counteract all the BS in the news and the financial services industry news as well. Every week you get a short video with an idea or a tactic to help you be a more effective communicator and run a more successful business. Every month we do a podcast with a communication expert or a top advisor. The upcoming podcast, I just interviewed Rick Edelman. Rick Edelman is both a brilliant communicator and a top advisor. And Rick is going to share some great insights in the October podcast. So if you're a member, you not only get all the previous podcasts as part of your membership, but then every month you get a new podcast. All right. So we also have dozens of high-value video training lessons on a variety of skills to be a great communicator. We have an archive of all of the articles that I've written over the years so that you have easy access to those, and they're organized under client acquisition, client service, leadership, and time management. Every month we do an Ask Me Anything webinar. So when you're a member of the virtual training platform, you can show up on this webinar every month, and it's recorded if you can't make it live. And the whole thing is just driven by the questions that are being asked by top advisors all over the world about how they can be more effective with client acquisition, client service, leadership, and time management so they can build the most successful financial services business they have the potential to build. We have an online 24/7 FAQ. There's an archive of every question that I've been asked and the answers for the last almost 30 years, organized in a way that it's easy to find and keyword searched. There's a really cool dashboard so you can track your progress. There are a lot of the courses are interactive, so you can track your progress and actually get a score for how well you're doing and learning these skills. The bottom line is ROI. Shannon is a new member. The first 3 times she implemented a particular process that she learned on the platform, she had never asked for an upfront planning fee. As a result of implementing what she learned, she got the skill and the confidence to ask for a $5,000 planning fee. And her first 3 times, she was 3 for 3. So for a few $100 investment, in a few months, she turned that into a $15,000 ROI. And Shannon continues to implement. She's not 100%, nothing's 100%, but she went 3 for 3 and got a strong ROI in a short period of time. As far as the money is concerned, you make a 1-year commitment, and you can either pay for that $100 a month, 12 payments of $100 a month, or you can just make a single payment of $900, and that's like getting 3 months free. All right, so for literally less than $1,000 or less than $100 a month, depending on how you pay, you can get access to incredible content that you can immediately implement that will help you move your existing clients to become full service planning clients and pay you for that, and have prospects come on board so they're really paying you for the value of you. All right, so there are a couple of fast action bonuses if you're looking for a little extra motivation to enroll sooner rather than later. I recently conducted and recorded a 5-part webinar series called The Mindset and Strategies of Top Advisors. The 5 webinars were the Top Advisor Formula for Building an Ideal Business and Creating an Ideal Life. It was a 1-hour webinar plus Q&A. The second webinar is why top advisors are moving away from an AUM percentage to a single flat fee. Again, an hour webinar with all the Q&A recorded. The Top Advisor Client Value Promise. So what exactly do top advisors do? So clients are willing to pay them quite a bit of money to be clients and are enormously loyal. Again, an hour webinar plus Q&A. It's all recorded and ready for you to access right now. The self-discipline, productivity, and accountability secrets of top advisors. All right, so, let's face it, there are a lot of advisors out there who aren't any smarter than you, but they're much more successful than you are because they just have better work habits. All right, so you need to learn what those work habits are so that you can really tap your true capacity. And if we're all honest, we all have some untapped potential. And then many advisors have limiting beliefs. And so we did an entire webinar about how you can move past your limiting beliefs and fears to maximize your true potential. All 5 of these webinars have already been conducted. They're ready for you to listen to, and we're going to give you access to those. So the tuition, if you just did this separate webinar series, was $995. For less than that, you get all 5 of these webinars immediately, plus access to the entire virtual training platform. Second bonus is we'll send you a copy of Values-Based Financial Planning. we'll send you a package of a tool called the Financial Roadmap. It's one of the tools that some of the training in the virtual training platform will teach you how to use and implement. So those are the fast action bonuses. In order to get the fast action bonuses, then you have to become a member before Monday, October 2nd, so the coming Monday. The fast action bonuses expire at midnight on Monday. Now, we can see what's already happening, and some people have already logged on to youradvisorroadmap.com/join. You also, in the chat box, you got this little image, so you could just click on the link and it'll take you there. And so what I decided to do today is something that I've never done. Every time I do a webinar, there are people like you who go, man, I get it. That is a huge amount of value. I want to get access to all this content on client acquisition, client service, leadership, and time management. And there's some of you who are just not procrastinators. I mean, you get it, you implement, you take action. So I decided today, for the first time, really just as an experiment, I'm going to have a special extra bonus. All right, so I mentioned that Rick Edelman is the guest on our podcast for October. And Rick Edelman's latest book is called The Truth About Your Future, the money guide you need now, later, and much later. And Rick is one of the few financial advisors who is also a student, as I am, about the singularity and the implications. And this is an amazing book, all right? Every financial advisor should own this book and read it. And what I decided to do is, as a little extra special fast mover extra bonus, I'm going to give you a copy of Rick's book, The Truth About Your Future. All right, so, but not everybody's going to get it. I'm going to give you a free copy, and you have to be one of the first 10 people to join at the $900 annual member level within 15 minutes of the close of this webinar today. All right, so in addition to the other fast action bonuses, which expire next Monday, this is a special fast mover extra bonus. Right, so I think you should have a copy of this book, and if you're one of those fast movers, then I'll send you a complimentary copy of Rick's latest book. All right, so let me get to the Q&A. Remember, if you have a question, just go to the questions area on the GoToWebinar control panel, and I'll answer the questions in the order that they're received. I recognize that we're a couple of minutes past the top of the hour, so you should know that this webinar is being recorded. I will answer every question that's asked, all right? I've had as much as 2 hours of Q&A after the projected stop time of the webinar. So we told you it was an hour, and it's an hour. We easily got through the content in less than an hour, and I'll answer all your questions, and all the answers to the questions will be on the recording. All right, so Larry wants to talk about heli skiing. Hey, I don't blame you, Larry. I would love to talk about heli skiing as well. So I see you don't have a question. It's been a while since you heli skied. I would recommend jump back into it, man. It's great in the Rockies. You can't believe how the heli skiing has opened up in Canada. There are some great outfitters. So if you want a specific recommendation of a place to go heli skiing where it's safe and fun and fabulous, just flick an email to me and or call the office, and I'll send you some suggestions. All right. Yeah, Scott asked the question, how would you suggest advisors determine the flat fee for their services? All right, so just give me a second here and I'll show you something. I'll answer your question, but I'll also tell you that there may be a little more to it than just maybe a little more to it than a short answer to the question. All right, so when you go into the virtual training platform, all right, so this is what it looks like. All right, there are courses, and if you click on client service, there's a course called how to generate 5-figure flat fees for service. Okay, when you open this up, you'll see there is basically a table of contents. And what this course will do is it'll facilitate you to answer the 7 key questions advisors ask before transitioning to a flat fee. All right. Question number 3 is, how much should I charge? So what I would recommend that you do, Scott, and I think you're already a member of the virtual training platform. So for you, I'm answering your question by taking you to something I'm pretty sure you already have access to. All right. So for those of you who don't have access to this is just one of many examples of how quickly the virtual training platform can pay for itself. All right. So for example, we have a very high-end training and coaching program called the Committed Advisor Mastermind program. And there was an advisor who was joining that program, sort of a veteran of using our methodologies. And we took him through this exercise, and he was going to charge a $30,000 annual flat fee. And we facilitated him through a process and came to the conclusion that he should charge $36,000 a year. All right, so I will tell you, most financial advisors tend to undercharge for their services. So I have never advised an advisor who does financial planning, for example, to charge less than a $5,000 fee for planning, and then how much you charge for the annual fee for planning, accountability, and advice is a function of the affordability. So first of all, whatever you charge, you have to make sure you're working in a market who can afford your fee. All right, so one of the things you will almost certainly learn to do as a member of our virtual training platform is you will build the skill and confidence to move up market, which is very important because you can imagine that the machines are going to consume financial services clients. They're going to, and they already are, working in the lower market. They're moving very effectively into the middle market, right? So the last market where the machines will be able to effectively compete is with the higher net worth. I'm not talking about elephants, but sort of the mass affluent, the people who are sort of the mass high net worth, rather, the people who are like at the $2 to $20 million zone. All right, so you have to make sure that your fee is a reasonable fee for someone to be able to afford, and you have to make sure that your fee is consistent with the value that you're delivering. All right, so I will tell you the lowest your fee should be is $5,000. And we have one advisor in our high-end training and coaching program, and his fee is $100,000 a year. All right, so I can speak confidently to $5,000 to $100,000 a year. All right, if you have a follow-up, let me know. Otherwise, Scott, look forward to your feedback after you participate in that. So, hey, Karen, nice to I see some familiar names here. So Karen, it's good to hear from you. So elaborate on doubling down on being human. I might have already done that during the webinar itself. In other words, your question might have come in before I got to the slides there. All right, so forgive me if this is repetitive, but doubling down on being human, I bring this particular image up because what we're really talking about is not using, let's see if I have a slide for this somewhere. All right, so just give me a second here. All right, so yeah, I'm going to open this up and bring this slide over. So there's all this fintech, right? And what happens is that most financial advisors are spending too much time replicating what financial technology will already do. So I mentioned, for example, when I ask my friends at Money Guide Pro or eMoney, so if I ask Money Guide Pro, who's your biggest competition? They don't say eMoney, all right? If I ask eMoney, who's your biggest competition? They don't say Money Guide Pro, even though those are the two financial planning softwares that have the biggest market share. What they say is it's yellow pads, calculators, and Excel. So what you have is these many financial advisors out there, and I've heard all the bullshit excuses for this. What it really is it's laziness. Gee, I already know how to use Excel, and it's going to take some study to learn how to use something that is clearly will produce a better outcome, right? And honestly, if you think that you can produce the same outcome with Excel as Money Guide Pro or eMoney, you're just completely freaking delusional, right? All that tells me is you have not seriously looked at what Money Guide Pro, eMoney, and other fintech can do. So what doubling down on being human means is that you're much more, let me just come out of this, you're much more into this. All right, so you're a student of communication skills. You become expert at asking questions and being a good listener, right? You can do this on the phone. You're brilliant on the phone. It's amazing how many financial advisors don't even have a telephone headset, right? Well, I know you're not serious about ever being on the phone for any extended period of time if you think you're going to hold a handset in your hand or cradle it between your ear and your shoulder. All right, so this is doubling down, means being great on the phone, being very effective. If you had a meeting, a virtual meeting through Skype or Zoom or something like that, you would, the lighting would be good. You'd be in the frame. And so it was interesting. I didn't know this about Rick Edelman, and I just interviewed Rick on Monday, and his podcast is going to be available for you on the 1st of October. So by Monday of next week. And I can tell you that podcast alone would be worth $900. I mean, so the insights that Rick shares about being a top advisor, about building a business, he's got $20 billion of assets under management. He's got 143, I think he has 143, I can't remember if it's 143 offices or 143 advisors, but he's huge. He's got a radio show, television show, and I didn't know this about Rick. So I asked him, I said, obviously, Rick, you're a very successful advisor. Let's shift gears and talk about being a great communicator. All right, so I've known you for a while. I've watched you for a while. You're obviously a great communicator. When did you decide that being a great communicator was important? And Rick said, he laughed. He said, well, when I graduated from college, I had no degree in business. I took no finance classes. I was a communication and journalism major. And all of a sudden, bam, the dime drops. So really financial planning became Rick's product that he became good at. He's obviously an expert in financial planning, but more importantly, he's a great communicator. And he talks about the importance of using different mediums, right? So communicating through television is different than communicating through radio. Communicating in a live workshop is different than writing a book, right? So there's some commonalities in communication skills, right? So that's why the Advisor Roadmap virtual training platform, it's all about people and communication skills, right? So we're not going to teach you, it's not our purpose to teach you how to be technically a better financial planner, right? So you can use tools that already exist like eMoney and Money Guide Pro, and if you would fully utilize those tools, you'd be in the top 1% of all financial advisors and financial planners in the world. What we teach you how to do is to be such a brilliant communicator so that you get hired, right? So that prospects hire you, right? So that existing clients pay you the fees you really should be paid, so that they implement and follow your advice so you can hold them accountable. So that's what I mean by doubling down on being human, right? So some advisors are trying to double down. I hear about, well, I'm a better portfolio manager. Bullshit. You're not a better portfolio manager, right? So that's just what you like to do. That's what you're familiar with. The world has changed. The world does not value portfolio management the way the world used to value portfolio management, right? So there's too much research, there's too much data that clearly indicates, that ETFs and passive investing, that the delta between what the active managers get and the passive management process, that they don't cover the fees. I mean, that story is out. Advisors know it. Consumers know it. I mean, why do you think Vanguard has $4 trillion of AUM? Why do you think Dimensional is growing like gangbusters? Not just because consumers, but because advisors are going, they're shaking, they're washing their hands of this whole idea of saying, hey, you should pay me 1% to manage the money. All right, so Rick Edelman talks about this a little bit more. You should watch that podcast when you become a member. It'll be worth it. That's what we mean by doubling down on being human. Be an amazing human. The things that the machines will have the hardest time replicating. That's what we mean by that. All right, good. Lots of good questions in the queue. Robert asked, Bill, based on your comment about getting back into the biz in your last conference call last week, if we are charging this $100,000 fee, for example, for our service and delegating away all the minutia, plan building, investment management, et cetera, what are the clients paying the $100 for if we aren't doing the work? Yeah, I'm happy to explain that in detail. Let me just escape out of here. I talked about it a little bit here, but let me elaborate a little bit. What they're mainly paying for is they're paying for the planning outcome. They're paying for the advice outcome, but what they're really paying for is they're paying for the accountability. All right, so let me bring up a visual that you might find valuable. Let's see if I've got it here. If not, I've got it somewhere close. I keep a lot of slide decks open and ready so that I can answer questions that might be outside the scope of the slides I prepared. So just give me a second here. All right, so this is the visual that illustrates what clients pay $36,000 to $100,000 for those people who are in what we call our Committed Advisor Mastermind program. Right, so it was mentioned in my introduction that I'm the most expensive trainer and coach for financial advisors in the world. And there's a good reason for that. And the reason for that is because we deliver the best outcome. Right, so we're the most expensive by like 3x. So to be in the Committed Advisor Mastermind program, the tuition is $5,000 a month, and you have to make a 4-year commitment to join the program. So that's $60,000 a year, $240,000 over the 4 years, not including traveling to San Diego 4 times a year. We meet 16 times over 4 years, and each session is 6 days per quarter. All right? And what the advisors who are participating in that program are doing is they're very specifically building an ideal client community, 50 or fewer clients who pay them $36,000 or more as a flat fee, and they're delivering this value promise. All right, so value promise is you as the clients will become the chairpersons of the board, so they move up into this green oval, and I will be your trusted advisor, your financial CEO. Notice I said financial CEO, not personal CFO, right? CFO is a technician's job. So what we're talking about is leadership. What they're paying for is leadership. And again, machines are great at doing technical work, but machines don't lead, right? So even in the most sort of dystopian view of the machines killing all the humans, what we tend to see is a machine army led by a human or two. So machines are very unlikely to develop leadership skills. So the value promise is, I will take over as your financial CEO. I will run all of your technical subject matter experts. So we'll make sure that everything related to your taxes is taken care of, and we'll deal with the accountants so you don't have to. We'll make sure that all your money management is taken care of, and we'll deal with the investment people so you don't have to. We'll make sure that you have all of the insurance you're supposed to have in every single category, and we'll deal with the insurance people so you don't have to. We'll make sure that you have all your legal ducks in a row, your will, your trust, your powers of attorney, everything that's related to you, the legal documents the way they should be to get your entire financial house in perfect order. We'll make sure all that gets done. So what the retraining is you have to unlearn being a technician. So we have accountants in the program. We have former money managers in the program. We have former insurance agents in the program. We have former financial planners in the program. We don't have any lawyers in the program. Lawyers never move into this for whatever reason. They continue doing legal work. They want to be technicians. All right. So what you're essentially doing, and the reason this takes 4 years to get this good, is because you're unlearning being a technician and you're learning or improving and radically improving your leadership skills. So you're leading the subject matter experts to deliver A quality work for the benefit of your clients, and you're leading the clients, holding them accountable to implement everything the subject matter experts say to implement, right? So that's an answer to your question. You want to know what they're paying 100 grand for? 36, 48, 60, 100 grand? That's what they're paying for, right? So we do teach this through the virtual training platform. I will tell you that going to this level is a very big leap. And chances are you're going to want to do more than just participate in the virtual training platform to do that. We have some live workshops. We have some other things like that. What I would recommend you do is at least use the content you learn on the virtual training platform and start charging fees for planning, accountability, and advice, and use the tools that you already have, like Money Guide Pro and eMoney and whatever other tools that you use. All right. Yeah, Tim asked the question, optimal number of clients. He's thinking 35 to 40, but interested in my thoughts. Yeah, it's 50 or less, right? So one of the things that you'll do is when you go through this course and about how to generate five-figure flat fees for service. That's an excellent course. Another really good course that you'll want to do. Well, let me go back to this course for a moment. One of the things that it'll take you through is it'll take you through the process of how much should you charge, and there's a whole exercise that'll help you figure out, well, how many clients can you serve, right? So you have to do the money math and the time math. And I've been at this game for a long time, and it's less than 50. If you want to have a life, right? So you can do the math on that. 50 clients, you pay you 36 grand, it's 1.8 million of recurring revenue. Your expenses are about 800 grand to run a business like that. So now you've got $1 million personal income, right? And if you structure it right, you're literally only working 6 months a year, right? So you have 6 months to play and 6 months to work, right? So the other course I was going to take you to, and I'll take you to that now, is you want to go to the under leadership. This is a really good course. So when you join the platform, this may be one of the first courses you want to take, and that's the course for creating your ideal life vision, defining your ideal business, and developing your ideal client profile. All right. So for most financial professionals spend too many hours for too little money trying to take care of too many of the wrong clients. All right, if that describes you, you're working too many hours for too little money, trying to take care of too many clients, then too many of the wrong clients. You got to do something to fix that. It's not going to fix itself. All right, so for a really small membership fee, you can now have access to all of our content about how to do that. Yeah, Michael asked, what percentage of financial planners do you think currently have some idea of the amount of disruption coming from accelerating returns? I would say less than 1%. So I've been a student of the singularity for the past 7 years, maybe about 8 years. And so there's a whole body of work on the singularity. There's a group of experts on the singularity. Ray Kurzweil is the main person, Peter Diamandis, Salim Ismail. So I have a small investment, a small ownership interest in the Singularity University, and I can tell you for a long time, I give a lot of speeches. So oftentimes, as the speaker, I sit at the head table with the CEO and the president and the national sales manager. And my favorite question to ask, going back to 2009, 2010, is I would ask the CEO, so what's your understanding of the singularity? And then I hope to follow up with that, and what's your game plan to respond to the implications? And I can tell you, probably until the last few months, no CEO knew what the hell the singularity was. They would look at me and they say, well, what's the singularity? And I would smile and say, well, it's the most important event that's out of your control, that's happening, that should be a huge part of your strategy. And then I would give them up, shortly, because they would always ask, well, tell me about it. and I would give them sort of the crash course over the rubber chicken dinner about what's the singularity. And so it's not just the financial advisors. I mean, the whole industry is oblivious. And I think for most CEOs of financial services firms, even those who are aware, their hope is that they're going to retire. You know, they're going to sell their broker dealer, they're going to cash out, they're going to sell their stock before the events have an adverse effect on their world. And some of them have done exactly that. I mean, I can tell you some of the broker dealers who sold their firms 3 or 4 or 5 years ago really sold them at the ideal time, because most financial services firms, you know, there isn't a lot of M&A activity in financial services firms. You know, there are some smaller firms doing some roll-up of individual financial advisor practices, you know, but, you know, you can't sell a broker dealer today, right? Most of the major firms are not profitable and are up for sale whether you know it or not. So it's more or less than 1%. Most people are completely oblivious to this. Yeah, so Chris asked, in the future you describe when an advisor still have any investment responsibility, implementation, et cetera, would this be outsourced to another company? It would be outsourced. All right, so again, money management is a really easy thing for a machine to do. In fact, you know, who's the investment person who we all admire the most? All right, it's Warren Buffett, right? Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. All right, so, and if you read Warren Buffett's, I think it was an autobiography, maybe it was a biography, Snowball, you know, in that, I mean, they break it down. They said, and they named their process. Their process was called cigar butts. And so they had a process for buying companies or investing in companies. And what made them so successful is they followed the process religiously. They never violated the process. And if you read it, they were very machine-like, unemotional and machine-like. They had an algorithm, they followed the algorithm, and they didn't deviate from the algorithm no matter what, right? They operated like machines. So if there was ever something that was perfectly suited to be done by machines, it's managing money. And for more than a decade now, most of money management has been done by machines anyway, right? So what you have is you have some humans pulling some levers. And now that there's more and more transparency, you as a financial advisor are looking at it going, you know, hey, I'm paying these people a lot of money to manage money, and they don't really do much. They really are just running the computer program. So why am I paying them so much? So they've had to drop their fees because you have, as advisors, have said, hey, we're not going to pay you that much. Or you've said, hey, if the consumers are so ignorant, they're willing to pay a lot for money management. Now that we see it so easy, we'll take that money. Well, the consumers aren't so ignorant about this either, right? So there's this consumer ignorance arbitrage, and it's being squeezed out of the marketplace. So most advisors and most consumers, and that's growing all the time, are placing a lower and lower value on the mechanics of managing money. All right, so you'll outsource it, and you'll almost certainly outsource it, and this is where the robo money managers come in. You'll almost certainly outsource it to a machine-based organization. This is why Vanguard is growing like crazy. All right, so it's machine-based money management for very, very low cost. And so a lot of people have said, hey, the effort to beat the market is really not worth it. So yeah, you might find a human who could beat the market, but for how many years can they beat the market? And the brain damage of trying to beat the market isn't really worth it. All right, so for 3 basis points, we'll let Vanguard manage the money, and we'll take whatever return we get because we're more concerned about achieving our goals than we are about the performance of our investments. And we don't believe over 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years that anybody's going to outperform anyway. And wasn't that after the market crash in 2009, Warren Buffett came out and he said, I will bet, and it was a significant amount of money, wasn't it? He said, I'll bet that the S&P 500 outperforms the best hedge fund managers over the next 10 years. So let's say we're at the bottom. We're sort of at this equal bottom starting point, and Warren Buffett has already won the bet because it would be impossible for any of those hedge fund managers in the next 2 years to catch up. The S&P 500 is so far ahead, and hedge fund managers charge 2% plus 20% of the profit, right? 2 and 20. So yes, you're going to outsource, and you're going to outsource. If you're not already doing it, you're going to outsource to machines or to a company that's using machines very effectively, and they're going to have a huge amount of money because their margin's going to be very thin, right? So that's why you're seeing the shrinking of the money management business. It's dramatically shrinking. Right? So I was at a company conference recently and was walking around the exhibit area, and guess who had the big exhibit booths? TD had a big booth, Fidelity had a big booth, Dimensional had a big booth, Vanguard had a big booth, and guess who was noticeably absent? Right? 10 years ago, there would have been 30 money managers there. And you know the same names that I know, and they're gone. And they can't afford to do what they did before to manage money. It just doesn't work. So yeah, I think I've done this already, Ed. Ed asked if I would elaborate on the training available on the financial roadmap to talk to anybody, anywhere. I'll go to the client acquisition area. We have this curriculum called the 7 Critical Conversations. All right, so the first conversation is very specific training, and we're very script intensive. Right, so if you click,
can you imagine being so skilled?
If you click on our virtual training platform, you get a little video explaining what that section is, and then boom, download scripts. All right, so we're very, very script intensive. All right, so scripts, what questions do you ask? How do you ask them? So critical conversation number 1 is how to have a conversation with anybody that you meet anywhere. All right, so sitting next to them on an airplane, playing golf on the golf course, meeting somebody at a charity event or a business networking event. All right, so, and then the 7 critical conversations connect to one another. So it's a sequence where from the time that you first meet someone to the next appointment, which is a phone conversation, to the face-to-face meeting, taking them all the way from meeting them as a stranger to them becoming a client. That's the 7 critical conversations, right? So I could sell just this course for $900, and it would be a bargain. There's so much more on that. That's the beauty of the platform. In the old days, if you heard me speak at a conference, in the back of the room on the table, there'd be a box of materials. There'd be a couple of DVDs and some CDs and a book and a workbook and some scripts, and you would take all that and it would be static. That's all that you would get. And now with the virtual training platform, you not only get all that content that used to be on CDs and DVDs and script binders, and now it's online. So now instead of just being a video that plays, it's actually an interactive training course. All right, so when you go into an interactive training course, there are things like practice chapters. All right, so you've got practice the opening. So there's a way where you actually engage with the technology. So you're not just learning it, but you're actually practicing it through the interactive nature of the technology. I mean, it's really mind-blowing. You know, honestly, you can learn these processes better through the interactive gamification of the technology than if you and I sat down and I taught it to you. Just the technology has the ability to do things that actually are better than human teaching and learning. So I think that will answer your question, but if not, feel free to ask something more specific. Let's see. Michael, I don't really know how to answer your question. How open am I to collaborating with a Canada-based retirement futurist? You know, I'm not sure what that would look like or be like, or what would be the benefit of that, but you know, I'd be open to a conversation. Okay. Thanks, Karen. Good to connect with you. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, Victor, there really isn't a trending formula for determining the flat fee, right? So the beauty of the fee is that what they're paying for, and this is one of the things I love about the planning fee, is what they're paying for is they're paying for you, all right? So two people can do exactly the same thing technically. And so if I want to charge $50,000 a year for comprehensive financial services, I can charge $50,000 a year, right? It's not a commodity like money management or insurance, right? So insurance, there are actuarial tables, and there are all these competitors who are, I wouldn't say they're fixing the price, but they have to have the price because insurance is a commodity. Annuities are commodities. So commodities are priced to the world market, right? So a personal relationship between a financial advisor and a client isn't a commodity. So I can charge whatever I want because I am a category of one. There is only one Bill Backrack. You can charge whatever you want to charge because there is only one Victor, right? I mean, only one Victor with your last name. I don't say last names on recorded webinars like this just as a matter of practice, but there's only one of you, all right? So the regulators can never say, Victor, you can only charge X for helping people achieve their financial goals. They can't say that. They can say they can limit how much a money management firm pays you, and they're doing that. They're regulating that. They can regulate the perks you can get. They're regulating that. They're not allowing companies to give away trips and golf memberships. And over the years, we've done a lot of crazy things like that. And they're regulating all that. So they can regulate the products, but they can't regulate how much you charge for you because you are unique. So there isn't a formula for determining the flat fee. What it really more is you working through your own planning exercise. So when you go into the virtual training platform and you take this course, how to generate 5-figure flat fees for service, what you get facilitated through is an exercise where you figure out, well, how much money do you need, business revenue, so after you pay your taxes and your business expenses, you have enough money to get your own financial house in order, to pay for your lifestyle, to get your insurance and save for your goals, and basically have your financial house in order. And then now you look at it and you go, and I'm just going to make up a number and say, well, let's say you need $1 million of business revenue to make that work. All right? Well, if you need $1 million of business revenue, how could you collect that? Well, you could have one client who pays you $1 million. Okay? You could have 1 million clients who pay you $1. You could have 200 clients who pay you $5,000. You could have 10 clients who pay you $100,000. You could have 100 clients who pay you $10,000. So what most financial advisors are frankly really poor at is doing their own business planning, personal financial planning, and strategic planning to think through, well, the world I want to have, I'd like to have a lot of time off, and I'd like to make a shitload of money. Right? So most financial advisors I know, they could agree with that. I'd like to have a lot of time off and make a shitload of money. Right? Well, then that means you have to have clients who pay you more so you can have fewer of them. Right? So that's why we get paid so much for the that long-term training and coaching program. That's like the little study group of the most elite members of the virtual training platform. Right? So the content is available to thousands of people, thousands of advisors through the virtual training platform. And then we have this sort of smaller elite group of hardcore implementers. And they band together and we coordinate for them a mastermind to really work together and support each other to implement at the highest and best level. And the highest and best level is to build an ideal client community. So you have an ideal business where you create your ideal life, right? And we've been doing that a variety of ways over the years, and we're just sort of eating our own dog food and walking our talk by harnessing technology, by being friends with artificial intelligence and harnessing technology. So what can be done through technology is done through technology. So formula, not exactly, but there's a process you need to go through. And then, of course, once you realize, oh, well, I need to have 20 clients who pay 50 grand, now you go apart and go, shit, I don't know how to get clients who will pay 50 grand. Well, we'll teach you how to do that too. There's a section here, how do I find high net worth clients who will pay my fee? We'll facilitate you through an exercise, and the content you learn on the virtual training platform will put you in a position where you have the skill and confidence to talk to anyone, anytime, anywhere, including people who have more money. People who have more money are actually easier to work with. You just have some limiting beliefs to get past. Yeah, Nick, good question. As a young advisor, what's one piece of advice you wish you'd been granted at age 25? Would that answer change considering industry trends toward the singularity? No. So I started in the business when I was 26, and the best advice I would give you is don't let older advisors try and ruin you with their limiting beliefs. All right, so the reason I teach what I teach, and I've had a successful 30-year career training financial advisors, is because when I was a financial advisor, I ignored the worst advice older advisors tried to give me. And what they told me when I was 26, which is terrible advice, they told me I should work in my natural market. Well, Nick, when I was 26, I was so broke I couldn't afford to pay attention. Right? So I don't come from a wealthy family. I'm not from San Diego where I live now. And I deliberately went to work for a financial services firm in La Jolla, which is a wealthy suburb of San Diego, so I could meet people with money. And I figured if I could work with people who were rich, I could someday be rich. And what I was told is, you can't work with rich people because you're a young poor person. And I ignored that advice. And what I did is I figured it out. All right, so the reason I have all these scripts today is because starting, I'm 58 years old, 32 years ago, I started working on cracking the code. Right now, in my day, I cold called, I did seminars, but I made it my business to learn how to steal rich people from their current financial advisors. And I documented what I did with no intention of ever teaching it to anybody. I was just figuring it out because there wasn't anybody who could teach it to me. I first tried to find, so there must be somebody who's figured this out who can teach me how to steal rich people from their current financial advisor. And as it turned out, there wasn't. There frankly still isn't today other than me. So this is what I documented, and this is my advice to you. Do not believe anybody who tells you that you as a 25-year-old have to work with young, poor people. Your target market are people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s who are worth at least $1 million. And there are millions of them. There are millions of them. So this, when you join the virtual training platform and you go through this the portion of this course, section 8, how do I find high net worth clients who will pay my fee, right? That's something you want to pay close attention to. And you want to pay close attention to the 7 critical conversations content. And you're 25, by your 26th birthday, you can be more skilled and have more confidence than most financial advisors twice your age at talking to anybody, anytime, anywhere. All right. So just reading this question here. Yeah, so the question basically is our program only for people who work with a high net worth? The answer to that question is no, right? So most of the people who work with us, what they do in the very beginning is they move from not charging a fee to charging a fee. So the vast majority of people on our virtual training platform are never going to charge a 5-figure fee, right? So they have limiting beliefs, they have fears, they have some other reason why they don't do that. Maybe it's legitimate, maybe it's not legitimate. It is what it is. So at the very least, what I hope you'll do is that you'll move. And let me bring up this visual. This is a good visual that I think will help put it in perspective. It's here, just give me a second. Here we go. So this is your fast track. All right. So we have a script and a process for you to schedule appointments with your existing clients and your prospects so that both spouses come to your office with all their financial documents. All right. So simple idea. Right. Then when they get there, you have to conduct a more compelling client interview that inspires them to hire you. So if they're existing clients, they upgrade. If they weren't paying a fee for planning, now they pay for a fee for planning. Then you use your tools. You execute the planning process. If you don't know how to do that, you contact Money Guide Pro or eMoney if you're using one of those tools, whoever your financial planning software is, and you say, I need to get good at learning your tool. They have training to help you get good at learning the tool. The vast majority of people who own their tool suck at using it, but if you will ask to be trained, they will train you. And then you'll generate revenue from planning fees, advice fees, assets on the platform, insurance, annuities, and estate planning. So that little visual, that's a flow chart, and that content is very cleanly laid out inside the virtual training platform. So I hope that answers your question. All I'm really trying to do through the virtual training platform is inspire advisors to do a better job for their clients, first and foremost, to actually do comprehensive financial planning and deliver comprehensive financial services and moving in the right direction. I don't have any illusion that the whole industry is going to move to being the most comprehensive and charging $36,000 fees. You know, I get that. So what we've created is we've created a virtual training platform that is enormously affordable. Right? So there's no advisor who can't afford $100 a month. And I wouldn't even know what to say to an advisor who says $100 a month is unaffordable. I don't even have an answer to that. All right. So, and then you've got to work within your market, within your comfort zone, and progressively expand your comfort zone so you can progressively work with better and better clients who pay you higher and higher fees. Thanks, Ed. Ed answered my question. 43 offices, 143 advisors about Edelman Financial. Yeah, so I think we're getting a lot of questions about the fee, how to set the fee, how to charge the fee, etc. So again, I think I've answered the question as well as I can through the webinar, and I think you'll find that it's one of many reasons why it's a very small investment to become a member of our virtual training platform. I promise you, you've wasted, if you think it could even possibly be a waste of money, you've made a lot dumber decisions than investing $900 in our platform that have been a waste of money, and this will not be. All right, you're welcome, you're welcome, you're welcome. All right, you're welcome. Just getting through that to the next question. Yeah, so Victor asked the question, how is the fee paid? And the fee is paid a variety of ways. It's paid, clients can just write a check, you can charge a credit card, you can deduct it from a bank account, a checking account, a savings account, a wire transfer, an ACH, right? So, I mean, really, if you think about it, the worst place to take a client's fee for financial services. And I could make an argument that it's actually a breach of the fiduciary standard to deduct my fee from my best performing account. All right, so even if you're going to charge me 1% of my assets, you could calculate that. You know, let's say a person has $5 million and you're charging them $50,000, 1% of their $5 million. You're taking the $50,000 out of their best performing account, their investment account. Why aren't you taking that 1% or that $50,000 out of their checking account, which is paying nothing, or their money market account, which is paying almost nothing? So how do you operate as a fiduciary and justify withdrawing your fee from the account that's growing at the highest rate? So if we take the $50,000 out of the 7% account instead of the 0.5% account, think about the compound effect of that 6.5% difference. All right, so I mean, it really, it's interesting to me how many people in the financial services industry are not especially financially savvy. All right, just coming down the home stretch, a couple more questions. All right, so you're welcome. All right, you're welcome. Sorry, some of these are just really nice comments, and I appreciate all the compliments. I just have to read it to see if there's a question in there. So let me see if I can translate this question effectively. So eventually, the question is about selling a practice. So Michael Gerber, the famous author of the E-Myth, said only 3 things happen to a business. Either it dies, you die, or you sell it. Right? So your business should be one of your most, if not your most valuable asset. Right? So if you've got a business that generates, and I talk in these terms because even if you're working with people who don't, if people who pay $20,000 fees or $10,000 fees, it's hard for me to get my arms around the idea of why you would want to be a financial advisor to people who pay you less than $10,000 a year. So I think that's always been a bad business model. But now if you continue to work in that market that pays you I'm talking about a total amount of money, financial planning fee, asset fees, commissions, whatever your total comp is of less than 10 grand, those are the people who are most likely to join Vanguard Advisor Services, right? So Vanguard, I think they call it VAS, Vanguard Personal Advisor Services. And for 30 basis points, you get money management and comprehensive financial planning. And they do a really good job, all right? So, I would not want Vanguard to be my competitor, all right? I want to compete for clients where I'm competing with humans that are not as good as somebody like Vanguard. I don't want them to have the Vanguard budget. I don't want to have them have the Vanguard skills. I want to compete in a different place. And so the lower your clients are on the financial food chain, the worse the competition is. I should say the stronger the competition is, the worse it is for you. All right, so take somebody like Rick Edelman, Edelman Financial, 20 billion of assets under management. They generate 30 or 40,000 leads a year. Rick's got a radio show he's been doing for 25 years every Saturday that's very well listened to. He's running a PBS special. He's a best-selling author of 8 New York Times best-selling books. His average client has 400 grand, right? They'll take people with $5,000, right? So you don't want to compete with Rick Edelman, right? So when somebody puts in your name, financial advisor, when you Google anybody's name, financial advisor, what comes up ahead of their name in the search engine is Vanguard, Edelman, Dave Ramsey, TD, Charles Schwab. I mean, that's not who you want to compete with, All right, so one of the reasons for getting skilled and confident and moving up market, again, you don't have to elephant hunt. There are a lot of people between 2 and 20 million. There are a lot of people who can pay 15 or 20 or 25 a year and are paying that. So you're building this business that someday you're going to transition out of the business. And what you want when you exit is you want a big check. So if you've got a business that's worth $1 million or $2 million or $3 million or $4 million or $5 million, right? So that's at some point you're either going to walk away from the business or somebody's going to pay you for your business. And what they're buying is they're buying a cash flow machine. And so the stronger that cash flow machine is, the more consistent that cash flows, the more you're going to get for that. So now is the time to be thinking about building a business that's great for you to own and operate and would be easy for someone else to own and operate. So that's the answer to the question about that. Yeah, Chris's question is about working with he's in Canada, and we have advisors that are in all of our programs, our high-end programs, our live workshops, our virtual training platform from all over the world: Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Europe. We have the UK, and we have advisors who study our processes in English and then have to turn around and use them in German or Dutch or Spanish or French or Cantonese or Mandarin, Korean, South Korean. I don't think we are training anybody from North Korea. So it's the same. It's fundamentally the same thing, right? There is a way for you to be a leader, and there is a way for either through your firm or outside your firm to get all the technical work done. Right. So when I first started, I was implementing this model in the 80s. I worked for Merrill Lynch. Right, so Merrill had an insurance department, they had a financial planning department, they had an investment department. So we even had real estate and mortgages, and so I used as much as I could within the firm. But we didn't have lawyers who could do the estate planning work, and we didn't have accountants who would do the tax work. Right, so when I started implementing this model, even in the 1980s, I used the easiest resources I could use. So I used the resources at my company if they were available, and if they weren't available, I went outside the company. So this isn't about, with or without a broker-dealer or a dealer group. This isn't about with or without a firm. This isn't about being an RIA or working at a wirehouse. This is about a way of delivering value and how you get paid and how much you get paid for what you do. All right, a couple more questions, we'll wrap it up. So just as a reminder, I don't have the data on this. For all I know, the first 10 people have already joined, but we have the normal fast action bonuses, and then we have the fast mover extra bonus. And the fast mover extra bonus is a free copy of Rick Edelman's book, The Truth About Your Future, for the first 10 people to join, become members at the $900 membership level, and you have to do that within 15 minutes of the close of this webinar. All right, so in about 3 to 5 minutes, I will have answered the last question, and we'll be wrapping up the webinar, and that's when the clock starts ticking. Again, I haven't looked. I know some people have already taken advantage of that. I just don't know if we're up to 10 yet, so I'm just giving you a heads up about the timing. So Jay asked the question, is that allowed to charge and pay you directly? And the answer, I'm going to say this a little tongue-in-cheek, Jay, but of course, right? So, and I appreciate that. You may be living in a bit of a bubble, all right? So that's the problem. If you hang out just with the advisors within your company, or if you only hang out with advisors who sort of think like you think and do business like you do business, you may find it shocking that financial advisors are being paid directly by credit card for their upfront financial planning fee. You may find it shocking that advisors are being paid a monthly fee where the credit card is automatically charged on the first of the month for $5,000 or $6,000 or $7,000 a month for planning, advice, and accountability. All right, so it's, yes, it is allowed. Yep, so Jay's follow-up is, I thought the fee has to be paid to the RIA broker deal and then you get your payout from it. Jay, that's one way of it being done, right? So, so the simplest thing, for example, is, let's use accountants for example, all right? So let's say that an accountant joins a broker dealer. How does the accountant collect their accounting fees? So if they get paid an hourly rate for preparing taxes or tax advice, can they collect, does that fee go through the broker dealer or the RIA and then get paid out on the grid? And the answer is no. So the accountant has what's called an outside business activity, and all their accounting fees are paid to them directly by the clients. So for example, some financial advisors own all kinds of outside businesses. All right, so I know a financial advisor who co-owned a retail clothing store. And so what you have to do, what you're required to do, is that if you own a business or have an interest in a business that's outside the scope of your licenses, then you just have to inform your firm that you have that business, and there's a document called an OBA, an outside business activity, and they essentially are acknowledging, we're aware that you have this outside business activity. All right, so there are many financial advisors who are separating their financial planning business, and they're saying, great, for the things I need a license for, so to collect a percentage of assets, to get paid an insurance commission, you need a license to get paid a percentage of investments or a commission on a mutual fund. You have to have a license for that, and that has to go through your broker dealer. All right, there are many things that you can do for your clients that don't have licenses, right? So what's the license that you need by law to be a financial planner? If I want to be a financial planner, I'm going to use, let's say I'm going to use Money Guide Pro or eMoney, and I'm going to sit down with people and I'm going to do the same thing I teach. All right, so I'm just going to go back to this visual. I'm going to call everybody I know, and I'm going to schedule appointments, and I'm going to have them come in with their wife or their husband and all their financial documents. We're going to complete their financial roadmap, and at the end of the financial roadmap interview, I'm going to say, so I'm going to create a comprehensive financial plan for you using this software called eMoney or Money Guide Pro, and for that, you're going to pay me a $5,000 fee. So what license do I have to do that? And the answer to the question is none. I do not need a license to facilitate a client through a financial planning process using financial planning software or using my calculator in a spreadsheet. There's no license that's required for that. You don't have to be a CFP. You don't have to have a Series 7. What the licenses are for is the licenses are for selling the products. So if I want to sell investments, I have to have a license. If I want to sell insurance, I have to have a license. I do not have to have a license to do financial planning and to hold people accountable to implement the advice from the plan. All right, so again, I know that you'd find that you might find that surprising, right? But again, there is a broad world called financial planning in the financial services industry, and most of us tend to only have the visibility from the smaller bubble that we live in. All right, so I understand. I worked at a wirehouse when I started in my career. My understanding of the financial services industry is what I knew from being at the wirehouse. If you work at a broker-dealer, that's probably your understanding of the financial services industry. You probably don't know anybody who works outside of that framework, right? But there is a broad financial services universe that exists outside of most of those frameworks, all right? So if you grew up working at an insurance company, that would be the lens you would tend to look through, all right? But there's almost certainly a bigger financial services world than you may have visibility to. So, don't sweat that, Jay. You're not alone. I understand how it's typically done, and that's one of the challenges with the singularity. Right? So one of the fears that the firms have is it is now so easy for you to basically get, let me just use this. So in the old days, what was the reason you needed to be associated with a firm? And the answer to the question was largely technology. All right, so today you have access to all this technology. So for about $2,000 a month, you can have as strong or robust of a technology platform on your own, on your laptop. And you would have needed 10 or 15 years ago, you would have had to be associated with a firm, right? You needed to work with a big firm because they all had these desktop services for transferring accounts and managing money and creating statements. And man, if you weren't affiliated with a big firm, you just couldn't deliver on that. And now none of these firms have proprietary technology, right? So you may work for a firm that pretends to give you proprietary technology, but if you ask, no firm creates their own financial planning software anymore. What they do is they contract with somebody like eMoney or Money Guide Pro or Naviplan, and they white label it. And some of them are candid about it. Some of them are blatantly lying to you and saying, you can only get this financial planning software at our firm and it's superior. Well, it's probably a white label of a financial planning software that you could buy on the open market for $1,000. It's just not branded to your firm. All right, so because it's not cost effective for firms to do the research and development for all this technology. So they use outside technology, they either white label it or they don't, and you have access to that same technology. So firms are going through the same challenges. They're looking at it saying, how do we retain advisors in a world of higher regulation and disruptive technology driven by the singularity? They have the exact same issue. And there are reasons why you might stay with your firm, but it isn't for proprietary technology or information. So they're reinventing their advisor value promises and how you will pay them for that, just like you're reinventing your client value promise and how your clients pay you for that, right? So progressively, the margin in the products is being squeezed. And it's being squeezed for you, and it's being squeezed for them. So they make even less money on what you do than you do. All right, so you don't need a whole lesson in how the profitability of financial services firms, but that landscape is changing radically. All right, okay, so that was the last question in the queue. So just in way of wrapping up, I feel very confident that we over-deliver on what we promised. We promised you a robust discussion about the big challenges facing financial advisors driven by the singularity. You got a crash course in understanding what is the singularity, what are the implications of that, and what you can do to be a success story in the changing landscape of the financial services industry rather than a victim of the changes that none of us have any control over. Another hallmark of successful financial advisors is they focus on what they can control, not what they can't control. So I'm a strong believer that your best investment is your untapped potential, which is why we do webinars like this and offer you access at a very low fee to robust content so you can tap your untapped potential. And I think if we're all honest with ourselves, we recognize we all have some untapped potential. So it's time. It's time for action. It's time to put what you've learned here into action. You've got 15 minutes from right now to get the biggest bonus package for becoming a member. And then you have until Monday at midnight to get we'll call it the tier 2 bonuses, which are still quite valuable as well. I'll do a quick last check for questions. All right, you're welcome, you're welcome, you're welcome. Looks like no more questions. I appreciate the compliments. You make it a great day.